Hello YouTube, welcome to the Card Combo Show, episode 64 with me, Chocobilly, where we look at weird and wonderful card combinations in the Final Fantasy TCG, and this week I'm looking at how to quickly overwhelm your opponent. So, I'm going to be looking at Bartz from Opus 3, Yang from Opus 9, General Leo from Opus 15, Nono from Opus 15, and finally Faris from Opus 12. Right, first we have Bartz. Now I imagine a lot of you probably know where I'm going with this. He's a 3 CP 6k wind forward with the text, Bartz has the jobs of the forwards you control. If Bartz has 3 jobs or more, Bartz gains haste and first strike. And if Bartz has 5 jobs or more, Bartz gains plus 3000 power brave and can attack twice in the same turn. So, with Opus 15, not only did we get the crystal mechanic, but we also got the introduction of forwards with multiple jobs, which is excellent, and a really cool mechanic, which, well, not mechanic per se, but extension of the game, which, opens up so many more possibilities. But the first that probably comes to mind with Bartz is Maria. So Maria is a warrior / rebel, which means that Bartz will actually gain both of those jobs. So simply by having Maria and Bartz on the field, Bartz now has 3 jobs, and that means he gains haste and first strike. And with Maria on the field, he actually becomes an 8k as well, as she buffs all job rebels by the amount of job rebels you have, or job rebel forwards, sorry. So that simply means that by Maria and Bartz being on the field, Bartz is now an 8k first strike with haste, which is really good. And obviously Bartz also gets the benefit of having any damage he has dealt reduced by 2 as well. Now you combine that with Leon. I mean, the typical play is that you play Leon onto the field with damage 3 to then grab your Maria out of the damage, out of the break zone, sorry, to bring her back onto the field. Now, unfortunately, with Leon and Maria and Bartz on the field, you won't quite have Bartz at 10k. But if you were to have Guy or Firion on the field, that means that they will all gain that additional +1, and so Bartz will actually become a 10k. Now, why this is good is with Leon, when a forward of a 10,000 power or more you control attacks, draw 1 card. And if you can get Bartz to 5 jobs, which if you had another forward with 2 jobs is actually pretty easy, with Leon on the field, that just means that Bartz can attack twice, and every turn he attacks, you will draw a card from that, which is really cool. And given the fact that he's also first strike, first strike brave, like 10k power first strike, is very hard for your opponent to get around that without just outright breaking. He is just sat there being able to block and attack multiple times whilst drawing you cards, which is really good. Right, next we've got Chelinka. So obviously Bartz already can gain the ability to be able to attack twice, but making it so that you have Bartz and then something else that can attack twice as well, especially with the Warrior Rebel package that I just showed you, having those be able to attack twice whilst also being brave is very strong, especially if you've got something like Guy, where Guy is massive, like a 16k or something stupid like that. With Leon on the field, it means that you can have 2 forwards attacking twice, each time drawing you a card with your opponent not knowing what to do with it. Golbez. Now this is hilarious because all we've got to do is put Golbez into the break zone to bring out 4 forwards onto the field. I mean, that's a tale as old as time, right? But doing this with Bartz means that Bartz will then immediately gain 5 jobs. He can then attack twice and have haste. So it could be a case if you play Bartz onto the field, then, I don't know, you magic pot Golbez to put him in the break zone, to then bring out those 4 forwards as well as another Golbez. Bartz is now pretty big, pretty fast, and pretty powerful, and can attack twice. Not to mention all the other forwards that you bring onto the field with Golbez could also have haste as well, which could be a big problem for your opponent. Xande, similar sort of thing. So you play Xande onto the field, at damage 5 he can get you 3 forwards back onto the field, and as I mentioned earlier, Bartz includes his own job in his text, so it means that you would have Xande and then 3 other forwards which hopefully have different jobs. They all come onto the field, do whatever damage or whatever you want them to do, and then Bartz again will be massive. Hopefully those forwards might have haste again because it is fire, and you just have a lot of forwards on your field very quickly that probably have haste, that are dealing damage to your opponent and just going ham. Sarah. So obviously Bartz, can become Moogle. Now he will gain the commando job from Sarah, so it means you have to have a job Moogle forward on the field as well. But ultimately it means that when Sarah attacks, you can actually reactivate Bartz as well. So even if he doesn't have 5 jobs where he gains brave, it means that you could attack with Bartz once, and then when you get to attack with Sarah, that will then reactivate Bartz for potential blocking the following turn as well. But yeah, just being able to combine that alongside using all the other Moogle abilities as well, where you get to do things depending on the amount of Moogles or activating the Moogles you control, is just very powerful. Orator. So this is quite funny. So just dull, choose one forward, select a job, it gains that job until the end of the turn. Now, as I've mentioned before, there was a difference between gains and becomes, or I can't remember exactly what it is, but ultimately it means that Bartz will gain the job as well as what he already has. And because Orator's on the field, it means that Bartz is a standard unit as well as being a freelancer. You dull Orator to then give Bartz another job, and all of a sudden he now has 3 jobs. And obviously this works as well if you've got Bartz has 4 jobs, you dull the Orator just to give him that 5th job if the forward that you had was giving this 5th job kicks the bucket. Lillicet. So I have been running a Dancer deck since the Opus 15 release, and it's fantastic. It's so much fun. And Bartz fits nicely into it because ultimately he is a dancer, but, well, he would be a dancer when you have more dancers on the field, but he also has Brave, which is very important because it means you can attack a couple of times with Bartz if he does have a couple of 5 jobs even, and then you can dull him, because he's a dancer, towards Lillicet's effects as well. And the Dancer engine is mostly in wind, water, and you can just kind of shoehorn Lillicet in there quite easily anyway. But yeah, it's just a nice addition to the whole package, really. Okay, Yang. So a 4 CP 8k monk. In Earth, when Yang enters the field, choose one forward until the end of the turn against plus 2000 power and Brave. If it is a job monk or a cardinal monk, until the end of the turn, it also gains when this forward attacks. Choose one forward opponent controls, deal it damage equal to this forward's power. Now, given the whole Sophie, Sarah, monk engine these days, this Yang doesn't really see that much play because you've got the Opus 14 Yang, which can play a monk onto the field and do loads of other things. But I really like this dude because without that, and with the now current bans or restrictions, it means that monks are less about just building a wall and staying there. It's more about dealing damage and being a bit more aggressive, which I like. And I've always quite liked this Yang because you can combine it with some really cool stuff. So Sabin, Opus 15 Sabin. When Sabin enters the field, Sabin gains at the beginning of your main phase 1 during each of your turns. Choose one forward opponent controls to deal 9000 damage until the end of the turn. So it means that obviously you play Sabin and it's at the beginning of main phase 1, which is kind of weird. So you could play Sabin in your main phase 1, but he won't get the effect until the following main phase 1. But ultimately, it means that if you play Yang when Sabin can get that effect, you can deal 9k just through Sabin, and then when Sabin attacks, he will also deal 11k to something as well, because he will gain the plus 2k from Yang, and when he attacks, deal that 11k to a forward opponent controls. Then you've got a similar sort of thing with this Sabin as well. So, and what I like about Opus 15 is it's given a bit more supply of fire monks, which I like. But yeah, at damage 5, when Sabin attacks, choose one forward opponent controls to deal damage equal to Sabin's power. Now, he isn't massive, and it kind of requires you to use his 0 cost ability. But with Yang, it means that he becomes a 9k and Brave, and when he attacks, he'll deal his damage twice, especially if if you're at damage 5 anyway. So yeah, being able to deal 2 pockets of 9k damage to your opponent's forwards is really good. Monk. So dull one active name Monk. Monk gains plus 1000 power until the end of the turn. So you can play Yang onto the field to make this guy a 9k Brave that will deal damage. You can attack with him, and because he's Brave, you can then dull himself to buff himself by 1 more, or buff another Monk if you really want to do. But that means actually when Monk is attacking and dealing the damage to a forward opponent controls, it will actually be 10k because he's buffed himself through his own ability. Chelinka. So when Chelinka enters the field, choose one forward until the turn, it gains Brave, and this forward can attack twice on the same turn. So if it attacks twice and it deals damage when it attacks, it means that if you play this alongside something massive, I mean maybe Bartz again, maybe Bartz is going to be a monk now as well. It means that it will be Brave, can attack twice, and will deal its damage twice as well. If you combine that with something like Sabin from before, the Opus 12? 11? The 3 CP 7k one. If you combine that with him, where at damage 5 he deals his damage on attack just through his own ability, but then also through Yang's ability as well, it means that you're going to be dealing 4 lots of 9k to your opponent's forwards, which is hilarious. Ursula. So Ursula's a weird card because she's kind of good, but she's also not great. But then Sarah came around. Is it Sarah or is it Sophie? I can never remember which one's which. The Earth Water Monk. And then, yeah, that card came out, and then everyone's like, oh, Ursula's amazing because she can play that card. But ultimately, I quite like the ability to put one job, monk, or card their monk other than Ursula into the break zone. Select one of the two following actions. Until then, return Ursula gains plus 4,000 power and brave, or choose one forward, deal damage equal to Ursula's power. So it means that you can ultimately play Yang onto the field to buff Ursula, and put Yang into the break zone to then deal something equal to her power. Now, she'll only be 7k, but there are, again, other ways to buff Ursula, and then when she attacks, she'll also do the same thing again. Alright, General Leo, a 4 CP 8k 5 forward with the very interesting text of players cannot cast summons, and the forwards you control must block if possible. So, yeah, if anyone's been wanting to make a Fire Nope deck, here's your chance. This and, well, I was about to say Amaterasu, but they kind of want to do the same thing, but you can't run both. Well, you could run both, but it'd be kind of strange if you did. But ultimately, it's just a really funny card, and that's one of the reasons I love Opus 15 so much, is that it's just loads of really funny and weird cards. But yeah, ultimately making it so that your players cannot cast summons is, well, either of you can play cast summons is just very, very funny. So, something like Aerith and Sid Randall, so making it so that your opponent really can't do anything. So if they can't cast summons, fair enough, but they've still got their backups or their forwards to do stuff. Sid Randall makes it so that their forwards come in, they don't do anything either, so now your opponent can't play forwards to get desired effects, and also can't cast summons, so they're really restricting what they can do. And then finally, Aerith, making it so that your forwards actually cannot be targeted by your opponent's backups abilities as well. Their backups, their forwards, their summons, they all become meaningless, and you could kind of double down on this as well and play the Dark Emperor from Opus 2 so they can't use action abilities either. Your opponent can literally do nothing aside from just play cards to try and wall you out. But, you know, a lot of decks aren't really geared towards that, so that's pretty funny. Dragoon, so, you know, it's got the nice crystal ability, but ultimately gives or when you dull and put them into the break zone, gives a forward you control first strike. Very important, because if all of your forwards have to block, it means that that's your opponent's way of kind of taking out General Leo, right? Now, the one benefit here is that all your forwards have to block, so you still get to pick who's blocking, because if you've got two forwards that have to block, General Leo and something else, you still get to pick which one blocks. And you can use that with First Strike to mean that even though it's blocking, it's actually still surviving. Now, if your opponent has First Strike as well, that kind of sucks, but you can kind of use Sid Sophia, I can't remember how to say his name, to take away their First Strike as well if you really wanted to. Garland, or you could just play only forwards with First Strike because, you know, they're quite powerful. And Garland is a very powerful card, and Fire has a lot of good cards which, when they're put from the field into the break zone, do something for you. So combine that with Garland, actually, that's not too bad. So you've got this massive 9k First Strike that has to block, but ultimately your opponent can't cast summons to get rid of Garland, so they're kind of screwed. Lice, again, your forwards have to be blocking, so make them big. So having something like Lice, especially at damage 5, meaning that all your forwards gain plus 5k, is going to be a big problem for your opponent. Now, they could play something like Melty Gemini, but that doesn't get played much anyway, and they can play other summons which reduce forwards power, so something like the Opus 15 Diablos. Actually, no, they can't, because they can't cast summons. Nail. So, yeah, General Leo, you're playing something like him, you're probably not playing many summons, which means you probably are playing quite a lot of forwards. So running something like Nail to be able to get a lot of forwards to hand and keep on playing them is just going to be paramount, and just keep on overwhelming your opponent, especially if that they have equally large forwards as well, and they keep on attacking and you have to keep on blocking. You're going to need those forwards to keep on being replaced, and you're going to want forwards that actually have a really good entry ability as well to try and take out your opponent's forwards, because whilst your opponent can't play summons, neither can you, so you're going to need those good entry effects as well. Realm. Can't play summons, but you can play monsters, and monsters are kind of like summons, but a little bit worse, but also have some field presence and are kind of more like toolkit things, but yeah, still fun. And Firewater works well together regardless, so having a monster deck where your opponent can't cast summons is pretty funny, and having just all these utilities that you can use but your opponent can't is amazing. And especially if you really double down on the monsters and you can get it so that Realm actually gets to 5 monsters and you can keep on bouncing your opponent's forwards as well, that's just fun. Chocobo Knight. So, your opponent can't cast summons, but you can keep on just overwhelming your opponent's forwards. Now, obviously with the recent bans, it means that you're not going to be able to play stuff like Mion or Stern to be able to really accelerate, but Chocobos are still pretty quick and fast, and if you combine this with something like Luneth in Fire, where all your standard units gain haste, it means that you can play Chocobo Knight to search yourself any Chocobo. You can then dull Chocobo Knight immediately to play another Chocobo onto the field. Maybe it's a Chocobo that plays a Chocobo, that plays a Chocobo, that plays a Chocobo, and you're just going ham. All these forwards have haste and can do so much stuff, but your opponent can't respond with summons, and that's the great thing about this, is the fact that the way the game works means that your opponent, unless they have something like some action abilities or back attack forwards in their hands, they really rely on summons to be able to do stuff on your turn. So if they now cannot do anything on your turn, and you just overwhelm them with all these things that have haste and are relatively big, what are they going to do? Lednar. I like this. So when Lednar blocks or is blocked, if your opponent doesn't pay 2, Lednar cannot be broken this turn. And, you know, your forwards have to block. So it means that even though you have to block, you're blocking with Lednar, they have to pay the 2. So now they don't have these summons, and you could argue that they will just discard the summon from hand to be able to pay for Lednar. Ultimately, they're still having to pay, and you can combo some silly tricks in there as well to make it so Lednar becomes bigger, harder to kill. You know, having Lice on the field, as well as maybe Lebro, so that Lednar's actually an AK, means that they're having to pay so much just to be able to kill Lednar, and you have to block with Lednar, so what are they going to do? Bergen. So you can only play with CP produced by fire backups to play Bergen from your hand onto the field, but when Bergen blocks or is blocked, deal 7k damage to the forward that blocks or is blocked by Bergen. So you can combine this with something like Manasvin as well, so that even if they are attacking with a 9k forward, when Bergen blocks, he'll deal 9k to that forward, that 9k pops, and rinse and repeat, you know? Ultimately, having General Leo on the field, meaning that they can't buff their forward, well, you know, using summons anyway, and Bergen just being there ready to stalwartly block anything that comes their way and just deal damage to them all, is really cool, I think. Nono. So, simple little 2 CP 5k win forward. Dull, activate all the job Moogle other than Nono you control. You can only use this ability once per turn. So, I mean, he's basically like Sarah, but again. So, being able to reactivate everything is really good. Now, Lekka Hapoka, obviously that's really good because you cast 3 or 4 cards, you get to put them in the break zone to search yourself a 4 character or less play onto the field. You do that with 5 cards, you get to search yourself an 8 CP character and play onto the field. Now, as I mentioned earlier, Sarah, you attack, she activates all of your job Moogle. Use Nono, you can then reactivate all job Moogles again, minus himself. So that means that you're going to be able to, if you've got a backup lineup of only Moogles, obviously minus Lekka Hapoka, you're going to be able to play a lot of things repeatedly. And not to mention that most of Wynn's things, when you play them onto the field, they reactivate things anyway. So, you know, you can play something like Ochu, followed by, actually I can't think of anything right now, Diablos, and then attack with Sarah, activate everything, then do some more things, then you use Nono to activate everything to do some more things, then you put Lekka Hapoka into the break zone to then play an 8 CP forward onto the field, which is disgusting. Yeah, just quite fun, I think. Hope. So, you dull Nono to activate all your job Moogles, but obviously it's only your job Moogles, and Sarah isn't a job Moogle, unfortunately, nor is Hope, or any other forwards you might want to be blocking with, or, you know, using action abilities of. So having Hope on the field so that you can actually reactivate other forwards as well is very useful. Not to mention that, you know, it's Win Dice, and that is what Sarah and most Moogles are, so it's a nice combination either way. And yeah, obviously Sarah attacking, reactivating Moogles, do some stuff, use Nono, reactivate the Moogles, keep doing stuff. Moogle 14. So, Ice and Dull. Choose one forward, dull it. You can only use the ability if you control an Ice Primal. That's fine, to be honest. And being able to, you know, just choose a forward, dull it. Choose another forward, dull it. Attack with Sarah. Reactivate all these Moogles. Choose a forward, dull it. Choose another forward, dull it. Then use Nono, reactivate all your Moogles. Choose another forward, dull that. Choose another forward, dull it. Now, I doubt your opponent will have 6 forwards ready, but if you combine this with something like Hope, as I mentioned earlier, it means that you're not only dulling them, but you'll be dulling and freezing them as well. And, you know, being able to just keep on repeatedly dulling and freezing all your opponent's forwards is just mean and funny. And similarly, kind of the other way around, but this is good because it actually doesn't require you to use a specific other element, so it could be mono wind if you really wanted. But 1 and dull, choose 1 wind forward you control that gains plus 1000 power until the end of the turn. Now, you can combine this with maybe Sarah, I don't know, or just Nono. It means that ultimately you can use this ability twice, that is 4 CP to only, you know, kind of buff by 2, but when needs must, and being able to ultimately have that option on the table, and buffing multiple forwards as well if you really wanted, I think it's decent enough. Mog. So, Dull, draw yourself a card. Dull, Nono, reactivate Mog. Draw yourself another card, because, why not? And lastly, Faris. Now, I don't have many combos with this card. I just have one Behemoth combo. And, wow. So, she's a 4 CP Water Fire 8k forward. When Faris or a Job Warrior of Light forward enters your field, select one of the 2 following actions. Choose one forward. Deal it 2,000 damage for each Job Warrior of Light forward you control. Or, during this turn, the cost required to cast your next Job Warrior of Light is reduced by 2, it cannot become 0. Now notice that the cost reduction ability does not refer to forwards, so that can actually reduce the cost of your backups as well, which is really, really good. So, let's just go down the rabbit hole, shall we? So you've got Faris on the field ready to go. You play Refia. Now maybe you've reduced her cost by something else, but chances are you'd be playing for Refia full. And let's say you play Refia onto the field, you search yourself an Ingus, play Ingus onto the field. Now, the way this works is that you would play Refia onto the field. Now, her ability and Faris' ability would want to stack at the same time. Now, as priority player, it means that you get to choose which order they stack. You would want to stack it Faris first, followed by Refia, so that when Refia resolves, she then goes to look for an Ingus to play him onto the field. Ingus comes onto the field, that will then trigger Faris again. You can then choose to reduce the cost by 2 again. So now you've got 2 stacks of Faris that reduce by 2. So -2, -4. That means your next Warrior of Light only costs you, well, is -4 to play. Now remember, it cannot become 0, but that doesn't matter because you're going to play something like Aegis. So, when Aegis enters the field, you may play one Job Warrior of Light of cost 4 or less from your hand onto the field. Now, he's a 5 CP forward, but that doesn't matter because it's only going to cost you 1 CP. You play Aegis onto the field. You get Faris' trigger and his trigger. Faris first, Aegis. Aegis then goes and plays a forward from your hand. He brings in something like, oh, I don't know, Lena from Opus 15. So now you've got a Faris trigger and Lena coming onto the field. And another Faris trigger. Put the Faris trigger first, Lena second. Now, Lena will require you to have some crystals on the field for her to be able to use her ability. I'm going to go with that you have 2 crystals, for the simple reason that that would then mean you can play Dusk from your break zone. So, let's review. You've played Aegis, you've played Lena, now you've played Dusk. You have 1, 2, 3 Faris triggers, and obviously Dusk entering the field. Again, you stack Faris first, and then Dusk. Dusk's ability, you pay the 1 water to play another 3 CP forward out of your hand onto the field. You then play Luneth. You have another Faris trigger. And, you know, ultimately, all this time, you don't have to be choosing the minus cost reduction if you want to. You can just be dealing damage for the amount of Warrior Lights you control, which is also hilarious. But I'm going with the minus cost because there's more to this play. But yeah, you have Luneth come onto the field. You now have 1, 2, 3, 4 Faris triggers to -2 CP, which means that is a total of -8 CP on a Warrior of Light. Now, there are no Warriors of Light that currently cost that much, but there is one that costs quite a lot, and that is Sarah FFL. And as I mentioned earlier, Faris' reduction ability isn't just for forwards. It's triggered only by forwards, but it works just on any Warrior of Light, including your backups. Now, even though it's -8, because it cannot become 0, it means that you have to pay 1 for Sarah FFL. But when you do play her, you can play her onto the field for 1 CP to then search yourself another Warrior of Light onto the field. And let's just go with Wall, because why not? So, and then at that point, obviously, you can, if you really want to, choose to reduce the cost of the next one you play, although I don't know how you would, because I think that's pretty much every Warrior of Light there is, minus, like, Arc. But yeah, you could have dealt some serious damage to a lot of forwards your opponent controls. But by doing this, you have paid, what, the 5 CP for Refia, the 1 CP, so 6, for Aegis, the 2 crystals from Lena, which, you know, it's hard to cost those, generally about 2 CP, but they come with backups that do things anyway, so, you know. You've paid the 1 CP for Dusk, and you've paid the 1 CP for Sarah FFL. So you've paid 8 CP, which is, you know, not a small amount, but you have gained Refia, Ingus, which I didn't show on here, so sorry, Aegis, Lena, Dusk, Luneth, Wall as forwards, and Sarah FFL as a backup. You just gained 7 forwards And, I mean, you could have dealt serious damage to your opponent's forwards as well, but all for 8 CP. You gained, actually, sorry, that's, 7 forwards and a backup for 8 CP. That's 1 CP per card. And they're not small forwards. And you got something like Luneth, that'll be buffing all of these guys as well. And then they've got Aegis, which means that they can actually party with each other as well. And you've got Wall, which has this great ability, and you'll also have Ingus as well, which means that they will all be buffed again. And it's just horrible. And you've got, Refia, when she attacks, she's going to get to remove something. Oh no, you might not have four Warriors of Light on the field. Pretty sure you will after doing this. But yeah, just a stupid and hilarious combo. And I don't know why I haven't done this yet, because I've yet to actually build a modern Warrior of Light's deck. I mean, I say modern, she's Opus 12, that's not quite a year ago now, but still, just amazing. Good old Warriors of Light. Oh yeah, oh sorry, I was ready to end the episode there. You've also got Sarah FFL as well, so you can reduce the cost of this Sarah if you wanted as well, make her only at 2 CP or 1 CP, whatever, and then you play her onto the field and you get to search up to 2 Warriors of Light as well. So she's already technically only 2 CP anyway, but then getting more cards to hand and having her cost reduced is minus value. Okay, we're actually done this time. Yeah, so again, more silliness and just random jank. And oh wow, we've actually had some pretty substantial bans. That's interesting. So for those of you that aren't in the loop at the moment, Stern has now been banned, as has Mion and Doga. And Sophie, I think her name's Sophie. Is it Sophie? Sorry, you know the one I mean. The Water Earth Monk is now restricted. You can now only have 1 of her in a deck. So pretty cool. But also, be careful of the cards you do play, because I believe it was Marshari, Sildra, and something else, I can't remember what it was, are also potentially going to be banned as well if they do get kind of abused. So be mindful of that. Try and find other random janky abilities to do, which is one of the reasons I make this show, just because there's stupid stuff out there that some people don't consider, or, sometimes it's not even really worth doing, but it's just fun to try and get the setup to do it. I mean, that Warrior of Light combo is ridiculous, and to be fair, it's actually pretty strong as well. But it might take you a little bit of setup. I mean, you'll need to be able to pay the 8 CP, but ultimately, if you can do it, you have an indomitable field, but then your opponent plays Shantoto and you're screwed anyway, so. Alright, thanks for watching guys, see you later.